So Star Wars Outlaws is this is a hilarious point because on the box, aka the website, it says the first open world Star Wars game. Okay,
You've taken umbrage with this point many
because
times.
it baffles me that in all the decades of gaming, there's never been. I mean, I don't know if this claim is correct. It has to be. I'm sure Disney were like, you can or cannot say that based on whatever. I'm just flabbergasted that we've never had an open world Star Wars game before, because we've had MMOs and we've had RPGs and a whole lot of other ones, and I can't say I've played any
That's
of
a
them.
good point. We
But
have an MMO.
Is that not considered an open world? Like, I don't understand. Anyways, so this is Ubisoft, not just any company. This is Ubisoft's open world Star Wars game. So I've only put in I must have played like 5 hours in the short time since we've received review code, and it's early days, but I'm really enjoying it. I think what I like most about it is that it nails the Star Wars aesthetic. I can't remember. You start on Canto Bight, which is Casino Planet, for those of you who don't know where that is.
Where they did the little horse racing in Last Jedi, I think.
It's that planet. Okay, you start there,
Yes.
you get off it fairly soon, and I'm sure I'll go back there. But I'm on the first starting planets. I think there's 5 or 6 that you visit throughout the game. I don't know if all of them are considered open world. But my first point of frustration would have been like, are there towers to unlock? Because that is a typical Ubisoft thing, and I can't tell you if there are late in the game, but at this point in my gameplay, no, there aren't. I've got my little speeder bike, and I can just roam around this open world area, and it does a typical thing where you're busy riding along, and then a question mark pops up, like, oh, there's a point of interest. You go then, oh, it's an abandoned cantina, and there's like a little puzzle to get in to get a bit of treasure. You drive along further, and then there's a syndicate outpost, and if you're watching the gameplay now, it's kind of like this where you can go in stealthily or you can go in guns blazing, and there's typically a reward or something inside. So it's got those typical open world tropes, and what's nice about it is that it doesn't feel like, look, if you pull back the curtain, I'm sure there are a lot of tick box things, but it feels like at this stage, my early days gameplay, it feels like it's somewhat organic. It feels immersive, and I'm enjoying that side of it. Okay. So I can't tell you if, in 20, 30 hours, like, oh my God, I'm so tired of, like, I've discovered 30 abandoned cantinas. Like, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. But at the moment, it feels good. Like, I'm having good fun just exploring the open world. And the game itself, I think it took me, like any game, it takes a little while to come to terms with how things control. Like in this game, weirdly enough, picking up something is R3, which I'm not used to.
Yeah, I found that a bit odd as well.
But can I tell you, I really like it. I'm so used to it now. I'm like, I wish more games did this. It just feels, there's something like tactile about it. You push it in and you pick up an item. Like, that's actually pretty cool. And then it's got all the things you would expect of an open world game. Like, it's got, your old faithful, again, if you're watching the footage, there's brush. You can hide in it, do some stealth gameplay. You can whistle, call people over. But I think what's cool about this game is that you have a little companion in the form of Nyx, who is just a little 4-legged critter that is pretty integral to a lot of the gameplay. It's a space
cat, honestly.
It's a space cat. You have all intents and purposes. Nyx you can use for a number of things, from pickpocketing enemies to distracting them to actually attacking them to triggering, like if there's a red explosive barrel in the distance, Nyx can go over and actually trigger it. And it's pretty cool because it makes the gameplay a little bit, I'm going to use this word a lot, and I'm sorry that it sounds pretentious, it makes it feel a little more organic or like off the cuff, because there are parts, for example, where there's 2 enemies, and in any other typical game you might have to like whistle one over, hit them, get around to the second one. Now it's quite cool that I can get Nyx to go attack the one, and while the second person's being distracted by that attack, I can run up to them and hit them, and then hit the first person that Nyx attacked in the first place. So there's just little nuances like that which I'm really enjoying. And it's not to say that, I mean, I had to think about it. I was like, how have there been no games with like a Nyx before companion? And that's not entirely true. Like we've had, I thought one of the best examples was Metal Gear Solid. We had a Diamond Dog or a Quiet, and it's similar in that regard, which is a good thing. I feel having that
even
support.
Some Assassin's Creeds, you have like an eagle who could not nowhere near as much as Nyx, but could do some of this stuff.
Yeah, like but having that little extra support, I think, just opens up the gameplay in interesting ways, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think you've played nearly as much, but you have
nowhere near
started the game.
I mean, I haven't even done the the introductory mission on. Is it Canto Blight?
Canto Blight, yeah. Casino Planet, that's what they call it.
Yeah, Casino Planet. I've only got my... I stole the thing from the club that kind of kicks off why you're kind of running away from the planet. That's as far as I got. So literally maybe an hour, if that.
Yeah.
But I do echo your sentiments on it feeling organic. There was a moment... early on where like just walking through the city you overhear a lot of conversations, and those conversations are actually quite critical, or not critical, I don't think they like required, but they feed into your missions quite nicely in a way that's not like press this button to focus on this conversation because it's very important. It's just like as I'm walking past someone, they mention something, I'm like, wait a minute, that corresponds to something I'm about to do. I listen to it and it gives me a hint for something that changes how I approach something. It's not set in stone that you have to approach it in that manner, which I think is quite cool. There was an example I mentioned where there's the card game. Is it
Sabak? I think
Sabak. Yeah, Sabak. And Sabak's like quite complicated.
Sure.
Even in previous games, it's a complicated game. But you can obviously gamble on Sabak and win money, but anecdotally, I've heard that you can walk around certain areas and someone will just offhandedly mention in a conversation to someone else how to cheat in Sabak, and you can actually employ that cheat and win some money. So I think that's kind of cool. It makes the world feel very lived in and real. And I hope a lot of that permeates through like the long run time of this game. I do find I like Nyx a lot. I think Nyx is really cool, and that, like you were saying, Nyx has far more abilities than I would have expected. I do think it's very odd that you can tell Nyx to pickpocket someone and Nyx will just run up in their face, pickpocket them, come back to you, and the person will be like, where the hell did my money go? It's like, my man, use your eyeballs, like it's very, it's like not a huge thing. It's a very game thing,
I know, but you're
it's
so right.
But immersion breaking, I won't
had the
lie.
exact same thought where Nyx, like, the person moves. It's like Nyx almost like jumps off their back. The person's like, huh. Like they don't say it, but they are basically thinking, must have been the wind. It's like, no, you just you just got pickpocketed. Like, come on.
And they can be looking at you. Nyx will run back to you, and you'll take the money, and they'll just be like,
you just give them a wink, like, good day.
It reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed 2, where if you're walking next to someone, did you ever play Assassin's Creed 2?
No.
So you hold the button to like pickpocket. So every time you bump into someone, you like, if they have something, you pickpocket. But it would be very similar to this, where you would bump into someone, pickpocket them. You wouldn't have to walk away. You could walk next to them and you'd see them stop, pat their pockets and just be like, and you're like, I'm right here. Like, I'm literally right here.
Left my money at home, I guess.
Yeah. It's that sort of thing. Like, it's not a deal breaker by any means. It's just, I find it quite funny.
But sorry,
but I think
go for it. Sorry, go for it.
I think the game looks really good. I think so. Another minor gripe: it's a bit of a pity that this game has a 40 frame per second mode, which is really, really nice. I think it is the perfect middle ground between 30 and 60 if you have the TV to support it. But the mode here feels bad. Like it feels jerky and weird. And I was speaking to Jeff, who also is playing it that way, and he's like, it just feels really odd where, in other games like Ratchet and Clank and stuff that have this mode, it is 100% the most enjoyable mode to play it on. So that kind of sucks. But other than that, I think the game looks really good. It captures like that Star Wars feel, I think, in a nice way. yeah, I'm excited to play more. I think it has the potential to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see. I love stealth games, so I love the focus on stealth. So yeah, I just want to play. I want to experience more of that aspect of the game.
I just wanted to say to your point earlier about like you overheard a conversation. It's the same. I picked up a note in a bar or somewhere, and it basically was just saying like, oh, like I hid the stash there, for example, just like a simple note. And then it was suddenly, oh, there's a point of interest on my map. It's like, oh, you know, go check behind that waterfall because there's a stash there apparently. It's like small things like that where it isn't, it just, again, like it just feels organic, which I think is such an important thing to have in 2024, is that as opposed to like a straight by the numbers. Oh, you go to a village square and you get 10 quests, you know what I mean? It feels better
exactly. There's no quest marker for that note, you know what I mean? Yeah.
It just feels better that way. But also, I mean, there's a lot more depth to the game than just the open world stuff and the quest. I think one of the biggest things is, just seeing it on screen now makes me think of, there's no like experience necessarily. Skills are unlocked in a very interesting way in that you're going to meet key characters throughout the game, and I don't know quite how it makes sense contextually in the long run, but the first sort of skill tree you have is from the bartender who sort of like looked after you growing up, whatever. And it's just these things where in order to unlock these passive abilities or these certain skills, you have to meet a number of prerequisites. So it's just an interesting different way of doing it, as opposed to like, oh, I need to get 10,000 XP points and then I get a skill point to spend and I can spend it how I want. It's suddenly like, oh, I want to follow this skill tree, which is more stealth focused. It's like you need to do 10 stealth takedowns and then you can unlock this ability. It just feels more natural that way. And again, like I don't know how this plays out in the long run with other skill trees, but it's quite an interesting way to do, skill progression. It's like, okay, this is how Kay is actually learning to be a better smuggler. It's not just I've unlocked skill points and suddenly I can sprint faster. It's like, no, there's some sort of contextual thing that lets her be better at doing that thing, which is quite cool. And
I think it feeds into the way you play as well, because if you're hitting those little progression points, it's like, oh, this will actually come in handy for the way I like to play. And then over and above that, the game, I mean, you're playing as a smuggler, so you're dealing with the underworld. Just on that, I think this is probably one of my favorite settings in Star Wars. It is when the Empire is big and, things are hopeless. It's the reason I think Rogue One is so beloved, as is Andor. It's don't get me wrong, I love me some good Jedi action, but there's something exciting about none of that, and like just an ordinary person doing their thing in this setting. And I mean, I can't tell you where the story goes here, but it is set there, which is cool. But in terms of actual context, you are a smuggler and you're obviously dealing with a whole lot of the bad guys, which you've seen in previous movies. So like the Hutt cartel is there. I know at some points in the game I'm going to meet old Jabba himself. There's Crimson Dawn, and there's there's another faction whose name has left me now. But as you do missions, your affiliation with them, pivots between good and bad, and these have different ramifications. So if I'm hanging out with my Crimson Dawn homies and I'm doing missions for them, I'll get, my affiliation with them will go from, sort of neutral to good to excellent. And then that comes with a whole lot of perks. They'll offer me, unique equipment. I'll be able to go to their strongholds. But then on the flip side, maybe doing missions for them pisses off the Hutt cartel. Then I go to bad and worse, whatever. And then all of a sudden, depending on how bad your affiliation is with them, if you go to their vendors, they'll give you worse prices, or they won't sell you certain things. If you get bad enough, you'll have hit squads come after you. So again, like early days, I don't know how this plays out in the long run, but that is an underlying system, which is pretty cool. Like at the moment, I am doing what I just said. I'm sort of taking on Crimson Dawn missions, and I'm in the bad books with the third syndicate whose name eludes me. Oh, but sorry, this also just made me think I did a quest last night where it was essentially I got a quest from the Hutt cartel. They gave me the mission, so it's for them.
and I had to go meet a contact at a like farm somewhere. So I met the contact. They're like, cool, you need to steal this client list from this farm there, whatever. So I get to, you know, go through this whole area, get to the bit where I steal the client list, and then this contact comes to me and says, I'm actually from Crimson Dawn, hand it over to me, and, you know, like, work for Crimson Dawn, like, fuck the Huts, basically.
Fuck the Huts.
And then you get to make a choice there. You say, oh, do you, like, double cross the Huts, or do you, you know, you kill this person who's telling you to double cross them? So I chose, like, yeah, like, don't really like old Jabba, so I'm just gonna like double cross them. And then all that happened is that my Crimson Dawn, like, then I was cool friends with this person, my Crimson Dawn affiliation went up, and my Huts affiliation didn't go down necessarily, because I had to go back to the bar and tell my contact, like, oh, I didn't find the contact list, whatever.
So they didn't know they you
didn't
had
know,
double-crossed
but
them.
The trade-off there is that they go, well, you did half the jobs, you get half the pay. So I got half the reward.
Okay.
So again, like,
that's cool.
Early days, but there's little things like that where I'm interested to see, like, I don't know, what if I had chosen to kill this person when they confronted me? Would it have been an Elden Ring thing where, oh no, I've deleted their quest line for the rest of the game, or is it just a one-off character that, you know, I don't know. I don't know how that thing will play out, but there are things like that which I'm very keen to keep seeing happen.
It sounds like it's going to be a system that's quite fluid, like not you're working towards 100% reputation on all of them. I think it's a thing that you balance consistently as you play.
And they say that it's either a tutorial screen or something where it says, like, you're never going to be in the good books with everyone. Like, it's part of the game. So, but they said, you know, a smart smuggler will, you know, like, figure out how to, you know, please all of them in different ways, whatever. So we'll see. It's interesting.
It reminds me a lot of there was a Splinter Cell, I think it was like three. There was one called Double Agent, which sort of had a similar system. It was a lot more, you could see the strings being pulled in the background a lot more. So you were basically, you know, as the title implies, Sam Fisher was embedded in like a terrorist organization, and you had to balance like keeping the terrorist organization happy so that your cover wasn't blown, but also not doing such heinous things that you'd piss off like the NSA as well. So you had these bars that every action you did would either increase one or decrease the other, sometimes only one or the other at a given time, which I at the time felt very novel, because, you know, letting one get to zero would result in like a game over. But you had these portions in between main missions where it was almost like you were operating in a hub, and you could set up, say, like bugs for the NSA, which would increase your rep with them, or you could set up something for the next mission for the terrorists, which would decrease their rep with them but increase your rep with the terrorist organization or whatever, and it would affect like your ending and whatever. It was kind of cool, but this seems like the very natural evolution of it, where it's far less like, oh, if I do this, I'm going to gain X number of points for this faction. It's more like, what can you get away with? How can you increase your rep with one without like really detrimentally affecting the other? And what do you need currently? So who do you side with, depending on what you currently need in this situation? So I think that's a really cool idea. I hope it delivers more during the game and isn't just like this is nice for the first 2 hours and then it becomes inconsequential, you know.
That's why I said, like, I don't know what it looks like in the long run, but at the moment I'm like, I quite like what I see. So
that's cool. I really like the progression system as well. You know, earlier this year I played a bit more of Ghost of Tsushima when it came out on PC. That was this year. And I was reminded how the progression in the game is very much like old school style adventure game, where it's like, you've got a skill point, and I'm like, cool, I've unlocked all the skills that kind of relate to the way I play. So now I'm just putting points in a skill tree just because. You know, it's not actually influencing the way I play, or like the skill I actually want is locked behind 2 tiers of this other skill I'm never going to use. So I'm just burning points so I could get to the one that I actually do want to use, which... so you know, new ideas around that, I think I'll always welcome. So that's pretty cool. Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I'm very keen
Star
to
Wars
keep
Outlaws.
playing all that.
It's out this week, Friday.
It's Friday,
Yeah, 30th of August, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yep.
kind of wild that. So this is done by. Is it Ubisoft Massive? I think it's called. People who did The Division. Yeah,
Okay.
but they also did Avatar from last year, which is like kind of nuts.
Where did they find the time to make an Avatar and
To be fair, like Ubisoft studios that make games, they're just leading them. It's like
but still.
every Ubisoft studio under the sun works on every game. But yeah, kind of wild.
I do like to imagine that the entirety of Ubisoft sits under one roof and they all just give each other ideas. At some point, somebody looked over at the Star Wars leads and said, you put an eagle in your game. Mm-hmm. Eagle are haystacks. Let me tell you, haystacks. Game
Do you think
changer.
that it's sort of like the meeting? Have you watched the second Dune?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's a meeting near the end where it's like all the tribes are in like a cave and they're all communing and they're all sitting on the floor. And then little good old Timothy Chalamet is giving a speech. What if that's Yves Guillemot and all the Ubisoft studios are just in a cave?
Or just chilling, just pumping out games. Never know.
Never know. Riding sandworms. Who knows? Who can say? Who can say?
In France, wherever the head office is.
Yeah. In the River Seine. That's why no one could do triathlons there. There's actually sandworms in there.
God damn.
Yeah. Cool. Star Wars Outlaws seems fun. Keen to play quite a bit more.
Yeah.